What's good? It's Woog. We've got Isaac Cruz, aka Pitbull, 28 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. And he's also the WBC interim super lightweight champ, which Subriel Matias, who just tested positive, then they said that the amount wasn't enough. So I think Matias is going to hold on to that WBC 140-pound title. But Isaac Cruz is taking on Lamont Roach Jr., 25 wins, 1 loss, and 2 draws. I believe Lamont Roach Jr. is still a belt holder at 130. He defended it once after upsetting and beating Hector Garcia to win the WBA 130-pound title. He defended it once in June of 2024, so almost a year and a half ago. And then he fought Gervonta Davis in that fight they had in March where many thought Lamont Roach Jr. should have beaten Tank Davis, and they ruled it a majority draw. Controversial with the knockdown, with the towel, all that stuff. Lamont Roach Jr. came away from that one with a draw, but hasn't defended that 130-pound title since, again, June of last year. And they haven't stripped him yet. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but I believe, again, that he's still a 130-pound title holder, fought Tank up at 135. Now he's fighting Isaac Cruz up another division at 140. So this is kind of an interesting matchup. It's at 140, but I don't really consider either of these guys true 140s. So that might kind of give Lamont Roach a chance at winning this bout at 140, since Pitbull, I never thought he was a legitimate 140 himself. I mean, even when he won a share of the 140 title, it was against another 135 turned 140 guy, Rally Romero, who I know is now a 147-pound belt holder. Boxing is crazy like that, and it sometimes makes no sense. But at the time that Pitbull Cruz fought Rally Romero, I'm basically thinking, this looks like 2 135 guys fighting at 140. So that's how Isaac Cruz won a share of the title at 140. Then in his very next fight, I actually went to this fight on the Crawford versus Madrimov undercard. He lost that title against Jose Valenzuela when a lot of people, most people, thought that Isaac Cruz was gonna hurt Valenzuela in that fight. And that, I would say, is probably Jose Valenzuela's best win, best showing, best performance, because Valenzuela then just lost that title against Gary Antoine Russell. So the belt's been just kind of going around like this. And I mean, even the way that Rally Romero won it before losing it to Pitbull Cruz, Raleigh won it in that vacant title fight against Ishmael Barroso. So you basically had this like round robin of that particular WBA 140-pound title where it was kind of being circulated among 135 turned 140 guys. And then after losing that title in the decision, split decision against Jose Valenzuela, Isaac Cruz then fought Angel Fierro, and that ended up being a 10-round war. I thought Fierro gave as good as he got, even though Isaac Cruz won a unanimous, well, I would say Isaac Cruz deserved to win a decision. Something like 6 rounds to 4, 7 rounds to 3, but it was an all-out war. And Isaac Cruz, since stopping Rally Romero, hasn't gotten another stoppage. So that fight against Fierro went the distance. Again, it was a 10-round war. And then Isaac Cruz was supposed to fight a rematch against Fierro, because again, that was a very competitive, exciting war. Fierro pulled out of the fight, I think due to injury, and then Omar Salcido was a last-minute replacement. Isaac Cruz beat him convincingly, but it was still a 10-round decision. So I don't think that Isaac Cruz's per punch power has carried up to 140. Plus, he's only like 5'4". So I look at him as being a really small and even underskilled 140 guy, to where if Isaac Cruz were to fight like most of these top-notch 140 guys, I would go with the established 140 guys. Even if we're talking like Dalton Smith, Gary Antoine Russell, a lot of these guys, you name it, I would pick them to beat Isaac Cruz. I just don't have a lot of confidence against Isaac Cruz because of his boxing limitations, to where I don't think that he can be an elite 140 guy. Even if he finds his backdoor way of getting his hand on a title, I couldn't envision Isaac Cruz being like a top 4, top 5 guy at 140. I just, at this point, don't. But that might not matter here, because his opponent in Lamont Roach Jr. is really a 130 guy who, again, went to challenge Tank at 135, totally overperformed. Like, most people thought that this was just Tank's next opponent that nobody asked for, which is true. And again, Lamont Roach Jr. overachieved and basically fought a really good fight against Tank Davis and wasn't awarded the win, but a draw, to where they were trying to make the rematch. Tank Davis ended up altering course and ended up going instead to fight Jake Paul. Then he got in trouble, legally, to where we don't even know if or when we'll see Tank Davis in the ring again. So Lamont Roach Jr. had to move on, and you would just hope that he got another good opportunity. Well, here he's going to be fighting Isaac Cruz, and this is actually a main event on a PBC card. Pretty damn good card, by the way. It also has Janibek Alamhanala versus Arislandi Lara in a 3-belt unification fight at middleweight. And again, this is the main event over that, even though I would put that one as the main event. And I'm going to do a preview and prediction on that one as well. But you also have O'Shaquie Foster defending his title against Stephen Fulton Jr. Stephen Fulton Jr. trying to become a 3-division champ. So you got those and more on that card. So I do see this as being a good opportunity for Lamont Roach Jr. It's kind of a consolation prize not being able to get that rematch against Tank Davis. And in Pitbull, he's fighting one of the more popular fighters in those lower divisions, in and around that division. Like when I went to Crawford versus Madrimov, there were a lot of good fights on that card. There was like Jared Big Baby Anderson against Martin Bacoli. There was Andy Ruiz versus Big Baby Miller. There were a lot of good fights on that card. But as I was pulling up to the stadium, by far the most merch being sold outside and the person who got the biggest like crowd roar was Isaac Cruz. And yes, we were in Southern California, so you had a strong Mexican-American contingent. But Pitbull Cruz is a very popular fighter. So yeah, there was a lot of disappointment when he lost that decision to Jose Valenzuela. But Pitbull's popularity in my book, it kind of outstrips his actual ability. Now, he is heavy-handed, at least he was at 135. He's got an aggressive style, an exciting style, and I would say his defense is kind of underrated. He kind of tucks his chin, hides his head pretty well. Again, he's 5'4", one of the few guys who Tank Davis had to kind of punch down against. But I think that because of Isaac Pitbull Cruz's loss to Valenzuela, that fight, and even the fights that went the distance against Fierro and Salcido after that, I think those fights all had people saying, yeah, I don't know if Isaac Cruz is really like that guy. Like, we know he's pretty exciting. He stopped Rolly Romero. He's had a pretty good career, obviously. But I think that a lot of the idea of him potentially being an elite guy, I think that kind of went out the window, at least momentarily. And even if you look at the betting odds for this fight, you see Lamont Roach, a pretty substantial favorite, not like a crazy favorite, but right now I'm looking at Odds Checker. I see Lamont Roach as a -230. That's a greater than 2-to-1 favorite, whereas you got Pitbull Cruz as almost a 2-to-1 underdog, plus 190. So the public, yes, a lot of that is because of how Lamont Roach just did against Tank Davis, and the fact that, Pitbull Cruz, while winning his last couple fights, has been kind of underwhelming. And knowing his boxing deficiencies and knowing how good of a technical boxer Lamont Roach Jr. is, I think that's why you see these odds so pro Lamont Roach. And when I'm looking at this matchup, I think of Lamont Roach's one loss, right? It was against Jamel Herring, believe it or not, back in 2019. But if you see how that fight played out, Jamel Herring was a couple inches taller than Lamont Roach. So it was Lamont Roach who was having to jump in and kind of overextend, with his power punches, with his jab. In fact, Lamont Roach's best punch in that fight was a counter check hook. He's got a really nice left hook, and this is orthodox versus orthodox. But Jamel Herring, it was a lot better than the version that I think a lot of people saw a few years later against like Shakur Stevenson and Jermaine Ortiz. Jamel Herring was a pretty damn good fighter around 2017 up to 2020, 2021. But his style and his proportions were very different than Isaac Cruz. Like, Jamel Herring is almost like a half a foot taller than Isaac Cruz. So I think Lamont Roach Jr., as far as I've seen, tends to struggle more with long guys who could stay on the outside and outbox him from distance, where Lamont Roach has to make the effort to get inside. In this fight, Pitbull Cruz are going to be coming at him. So I think you're going to have Bull and Matador, kind of that type of dynamic. Not too dissimilar from Isaac Cruz versus Tank Davis. Now, Lamont Roach is about 5'6", maybe 5'7", but I think he's more 5'6", 5'6 and a half. still a couple inches taller than Isaac Cruz. He's going to have the reach advantage. So I think he's going to be trying to somewhat stand his ground. He's going to jab to the body. He's going to try to keep Isaac Cruz outside, and he's going to use angles to kind of turn and check hook and box as Isaac Cruz tries to come into the pocket. Now, remember when Tank Davis hurt his left hand against Isaac Cruz? Tank Davis was kind of relegated to becoming a one-handed fighter in that fight. But with his lead hand, he still did enough to narrowly win that fight, to edge that fight against Pitbull. So I think that Lamont Roach Jr., given his boxing acumen, and I think, by the way, that he's improved since that competitive but somewhat clear-ish loss to Jamel Herring, I think Lamont Roach Jr. has improved a lot over the past few years. He looked pretty good in that win against Rene Alvarado, who I remember giving William Zepeda a pretty good run for his money. Lamont Roach Jr. looked good, obviously winning the belt at 130 against Hector Garcia. And then in his fight before Tank Davis, he stopped Fergal McCrory in the 8th round. He looked really good in that fight. So Lamont Roach Jr., technically sound, pretty good reflexes, not out of this world hand speed, he doesn't do anything that really jumps off the page, but he's like a B+ in all of these different categories. So he's a tough out. I mean, Tank Davis, I mean, they're regional, rivals as well. So there was some familiarity there. But I think Tank Davis kind of underestimated Lamont Roach Jr. Like, I'm under no delusion that Lamont Roach Jr. is as good or better than Tank Davis. I think that you got one of, if not the best, Lamont Roach Jr. performance against one of the worst Tank Davis performances. I could be wrong, but that's at least how I see that. But I'm wondering here, if Lamont Roach Jr. going up another division, even if it's not against a true 140, if he is biting off more than he can chew, does he have enough firepower to keep Pitbull honest, to keep Pitbull either at bay or to make Pitbull continuously run into counters? I don't know that. Like, yes, we've seen Pitbull Cruz outbox a couple of times now, a few times you could argue, but beating Pitbull Cruz is still easier said than done. You've got to be able to handle the smoke. And Jose Valenzuela is a southpaw. So there was also that dynamic that you won't have here. But I feel like based on where these guys are in their careers, not that Pitbull Cruz is like a shot fighter or post-prime or anything like that. He's still in his late 20s. In fact, he's younger than Lamont Roach Jr., who is about, I think, 30, right on the dot, 30 years old. But I think that because you've got a surging Lamont Roach Jr. who desperately wants to make a name for himself, came so close to beating Tank Davis, but wasn't awarded that, I feel like he's got a chip on his shoulder right now. He is out for respect. Whereas, Pitbull Cruz, I mean, what you see is what you get. I don't think he's going to reinvent the wheel and all of a sudden fight in a style that is uncharacteristic of him. I feel like you're always going to get a certain style from Pitbull Cruz. And I think Lamont Roach Jr. more or less is ready to handle that. I do think that he's got a mature enough game. He's got good enough defense. I think he's durable enough. I think that he kind of keeps his head, doesn't panic. He's got the IQ. I feel like he's got enough tools to outbox and to beat Isaac Cruz in a close decision. I think that Isaac Cruz will certainly have his moments. And, I did see Lamont Roach Jr. get buzzed a bit by Jamel Herring. And Isaac Cruz could certainly hurt Lamont Roach Jr. Again, the weight dynamic, the size dynamic, even though, again, I'm going to say it again, Isaac Cruz is not a true 140. He's at least been in that division for a couple of fights now, for about 3, maybe 4 fights. Yeah, I think 4 fights, because Rolly Romero was the first of the 4, and before that is when Giovanni Cabrera, for a few rounds, was kind of outboxing Isaac Cruz. And in that fight against Giovanni Cabrera, who we saw get wiped out against William Zepeda, Isaac Cruz won a split decision against Giovanni Cabrera. So yeah, I think that Lamont Roach Jr. has got the goods to outbox Isaac Cruz here. And I don't know if any WBC interim super lightweight 140 status is at stake in this fight. I believe it is, but if Subriel Matias doesn't get stripped of his belt due to that PED positive, he's going to be fighting Dalton Smith. And I think that he's going to have his hands full in that fight. I can't wait to break that one down. But I guess the winner of this fight should be in line to fight the winner of Matias versus Dalton Smith. I kind of hope that's how this one is shaping up. But yeah, I'm going to go with Lamont Roach to win a decision, and a pretty clear one. I think that he's going to beat Isaac Cruz more definitively than Tank Davis, maybe about as definitively as Valenzuela did, because I thought Valenzuela's win over Isaac Cruz was a pretty clear one. But I think that Lamont Roach Jr. is going to win something like 8 rounds to 4, but I think it's going to be like a, yeah, he definitely deserved to win that decision type of decision. But yeah, this one's going to be taking place in San Antonio. Again, it's a pretty damn good fight card. One of the last really good fight cards of the year. I know we still have Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua and a couple of other fights, but yeah, this one is one that I'm really looking forward to. By the way, in this same division, you're about to get, I believe they're remaking for that Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua undercard. I hope that they have rescheduled Gary Antoine Russell's title defense against Andy Hiraoka, which I think is a very dangerous fight for Russell, but I can't wait to break that one down either. But yeah, 140, one of the best divisions in the sport. It's just funny that in this case, you've got a good 140 fight between two guys who I really don't even consider 140 fighters. So I wonder again, if Lamont Roach is ever going to defend that 130-pound title again, because now that he's fighting at 140, he'll have to drop 2 divisions to be able to defend at 130. So to me, it might not be a matter of if, but when does he vacate or get stripped of that 130-pound title that he won from Hector Garcia. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Pitbull Cruz versus Lamont Roach Jr. Again, I'm happy that Lamont Roach Jr. got another good opportunity since that rematch versus Tank Davis fell apart. And again, I have no idea what Tank Davis's future in the sport is going to look like. I mean, he was talking about retirement before the Jake Paul fight, and now that that's off the table, I wonder if he's, going to fight at all. Again, we'll see. I mean, we'll see how his legal situation shapes up. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.